Hello, I would like to demonstrate the Inspect SQL of module in DBA's Enterprise for MySQL database. First of all, we have to open the Tune SQL repository and select or create one of the SQL repository. Here is the Inspect SQL. What is Inspect SQL? Inspect SQL helps you to analyze a set of SQL statements that are captured by performance schema in events statements summary by digest table or events statements history long table. There's a lot of SQL statements had been collected by the performer schema in MySQL database. You can take account on the tables to see how many SQL statements are already captured. Here is the event statement summary by digest table. There are about 2,700 SQL statements here. Here is the event statements history long table. There is around 2,900 SQL statements. We can capture all SQL statement to do an analysis, or you can specify which schema you want to extract the SQL statements. Let's select this schema. And now you can capture all kinds of SQL statement from this table. And then we can execute extract SQL statements here. Okay, here is the SQL statements, which is going to extract from the database. The extraction is finished. Here is the analysis of around 2,900 SQL statements. These 2,900 SQL statement will be ordered by the resource consumption. Left-hand side of the SQL statements which spend most resource. And then the less resource consumption SQL on the right-hand side. And here is a degree of deviation from 80/20 rule. It means that whether the overall resource consumption align with the pattern that 20% of SQL statements will spend 80% of overall resource. It is a general overview compare with the 80/20 rule of your SQL resources distribution. In this example, you can see that there are about 8 SQL statements which spend up to 80% of CPU time. And this about 10% 294 SQL statements used up to 80% of some time or wait. And here is the average time or wait. So, the overall of time or wait distribution is quite normal, but the CPU time resource distribution is quite abnormal. It is less than 1% of SQL statements occupied up to 80% of CPU time. So we can focus on this 8 SQL statements and see why these small number of SQL statements spend so much CPU time. It is more than 80% of overall CPU time. So you can focus on turning these 8 SQL statements to improve the system's overall CPU consumption. So it's very helpful for user who can quickly identify the bottleneck of the SQL statements. So, it is not necessary to review SQL resource one by one and calculate most resource-consuming SQL statements. We can see that there is 8 and 0.2% SQL statements, which spend up to 80% of CPU time. So we just focus on this 8 SQL statements. We can bring the overall database system with a significant improvement. Here are some traditional high workload analysis, which is the top 20 high workload SQL statements for some time or wait and in some row examined. And here is the top 20 SQL statements with highest average time or wait, average CPU time and average rows examined. Click any bar in the in chart to see which 20 SQL statements spend most time or wait here. That is it for the demonstration. And thank you for watching our demonstration.